Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in to Real Estate Real Talk with Julia M. Spencer. You are listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We're Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. Thank you so much again for tuning in. This is my third radio show on this station. Actually, it's my third radio show on any station. I'm a brand new host. I'm still trying to get the ropes of how all the equipment works in the studio, and the people here are so wonderfully explaining everything to me. But I am really glad to be here and bring my knowledge and my experience about real estate to you. And hopefully you can get some good information and useful information that you can use in your everyday life if you are a tenant or a landlord or a real estate investor like myself, or if you have to do anything at all with real estate or deal with real estate professionals. And I think most everyone that's listening is falling into that particular area. So in addition to that, I want to tell you that my email address is realestate@juliamspencer.com. Please do not hesitate whatsoever to send me a message or any kind of questions that you may have, and I will address them either on the show, or I will let you know where you can get some answers on the show. And my goal is to not only just be the only talker on the show, but I also periodically I will bring in guests from different areas of expertise in real estate, and I'll let them share what they know. Last week we had Patrick Johnson here on the show. He was a landscape expert. He actually works for a landscaping company. He gave us some really, really awesome tips on how to maintain a property, how to make a property look better and make it give it a little bit more curb appeal, either for selling or just for you to have a little bit more pride in your real estate. And my very first show, I was talking about tenants and landlords and some of the things that you can do as a landlord to help your tenants, to attract better tenants and to help them basically keep their leases in good standing. And also for tenants, what they can do to improve communications and the relationship with their landlord. If you haven't listened to those shows in the last 2 weeks, don't despair. The recorded shows are actually at WRUU.org. You can go to archives on that website and just listen to them again there. They're going to be available for whenever, and you can send me a message, send me an email, realestate@juliamspencer.com. If there's anything there that you want to comment on, if you have any kind of feedback that you want to give me, or if you have any kind of criticism. Now, of course, I always appreciate constructive criticism. Tell me how I can do things better. As I said, I'm a brand new host, so I'm still learning, and I'm trying to get the feel for what people actually want to listen to. So let me just give you a little bit more information about some of the shows that I actually have lined up here in the future. Very recently, and one of the things that I do on in my life actually, and that I want to talk about in my shows, are tax sale foreclosures. This is one of the biggest topics that people are mostly interested, that always ask me questions in my YouTube videos and also on my website to ask me, okay, tell me more about tax sale foreclosures. Tell me how to get these really cheap houses for pennies on the dollar. Is that even possible? And we've all seen these infomercials late at night where we are told that we can buy this property for $1,000 or buy this one for $500. How does all of that work? And who do you even ask to get the right information? Well, you are in awesome luck here, because I am the person to ask. I've been doing tax sale foreclosure investing for decades now. I don't even want to remember how far back I go. But I've done it here mostly in the state of Georgia, also in Florida and South Carolina. I've done some investing in Nevada, and I've been checking all kinds of other states to do that in. But the point is that I actually know how tax sale foreclosures are conducted in all states of the United States, and I can give you information on any one of them. Of course, everybody that's listening to the show here is probably mostly interested in Georgia, and again, you are in most of the luck here, because I live here, right here in Savannah, and I do this right here in Savannah. I also do, in other counties close to here, South Carolina and Florida. So these are the states that are adjacent to Georgia. And I can tell you exactly how it's done here and some of the things that you can and cannot do and the rules. And that's something that a lot of people are very interested to know about. So very recently, I actually went to a tax sale foreclosure, and not to get off the topic, but I always meet these awesome, cool people that go to these auctions. And these are contractors, small-time investors. They're also big institutional investors or people that work for big institutional investors, as well as all kinds of people from all walks of life that are trying to get into tax sale foreclosure investing and getting these properties at the courthouse steps. And I also have met a lot of people that are actually very critical about me getting into this sort of field. And this, again, is only a small thing of what I do with real estate investing. My main focus, of course, has always been vacation rentals here in Savannah. We have such a great, awesome city here that enables vacation rental hosts like myself to enable us to basically make a lot of money on our real estate and also have this awesome lifestyle of constantly meeting new people, working in customer service, enabling vacationers to have a great time here in Savannah. So that's my big focus, but I do tax sale foreclosure investing. So I wanted to also address a lot of the criticism that I get about tax foreclosure investing and some of the people that I've met, and I can tell you volumes and volumes about stories of properties that I've bought and the problems I've encountered and some of the funny things that we've done. And some of my YouTube videos actually also explain some of that stuff. So just bear with me. Keep listening to this show. Every Wednesday I'm on at about 12:06 p.m. It's going to be very interesting and for you to get these stories, even if you're not interested in tax sale foreclosure investing or real estate in general. You'll get a kick out of listening to these funny stories. So at my recent auction, I actually met a home inspector, and he was actually standing in line with me, behind me actually, as I was paying for my purchase, and we got to talk about home inspections. And basically what he does for business is he goes into these homes and basically tells people if their intention is to buy that property, basically tells them, okay, we've inspected all your systems. This is not compliant. This is something that needs to be fixed soon. Your roof has got only maybe half a year on it or whatever. And the home buyer then has a better idea of what they're actually buying. And it's not required for a home buyer to hire someone like that when they purchase a home, but it's a very good idea, and I can tell more about my opinion about this. But the cool thing is he was willing to come on the show here sometime in the future. He's going to tell us all about his qualifications and some of the things he encounters during his work. And some of that might be very useful information to all of us here. I have, of course, bought lots of properties the normal, regular way. And with that, I mean, basically you go to a real estate agent, ask them for the listings, meet with them, go look at the properties, and then you kind of make a decision, and then you go through the whole make an offer on this house, and they counter offer and all that spiel. And I've done that actually in many states. I've owned properties in several states. And the process of that, of course, is a little bit different in every state, but generally all the same as well. And I have used home inspectors on a lot of the more expensive properties, but also very recently, of course, since I'm in tax sale foreclosures, I've stopped using them because I've gotten so much information from the reports that I get from home inspectors that I'm confident that together with my contractor, my long-term contractor that's been working with me for over a decade, we were able to look at a home ourselves, and we don't have to pay the prices to an inspector. So with this show, and hopefully whenever I bring this person on, we can talk a little bit about that, and then you can get some idea or give yourself some overview basically on what they do and whether or not you want to pay for somebody to inspect your home before you purchase it. So that would be a future show, so stay tuned. In addition, of course, as I mentioned, I do a lot of vacation rental hosting in this town, and there's several of us, actually quite a few. And actually, if you are listening and you are a vacation rental host here in Savannah, and there's several sites out there where you can list your properties and I know Airbnb is one of the ones that people use a lot. There's VRBO, HomeAway. There's probably dozens of websites now that cater to all kinds of travelers where you can list your property for rent as a vacation rental. And of course, the city of Savannah has special regulations about this, so you have to be kind of careful if you do this within the city limits of what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do in terms of zoning and things like that. And people have gotten into trouble with this. And I will bring in a couple of other hosts, and we're going to be talking about that and mostly about vacation rental hosting and kind of giving you an overview of that situation here in Savannah as well. And last but not least, of course, I'll be glad to bring in one of my contractors. We can talk all about home improvement and remodeling, and also a couple of the attorneys that I work with, and ask them specific questions specifically to the legal justifications or legal ramifications, I should rather say, about investing in tax sale foreclosures, which is mostly what I use attorneys for these days. And with that, I wanted to remind you that if you enjoy our programming on WRUU-LP, please support the station with a donation. As an individual, you can give any amount, become a basic station member, or become a serious fan of the station. To check out membership rates and to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual and select to donate monthly or subscribe to an annual membership. Again, to donate to the station, go to www.wruu.org/individual and select to donate monthly or subscribe to an annual membership. Thank you for listening to and supporting WRUU-LP. Sister Sound Showcase is a fundraiser for WRUU featuring Cece Witt, Sarah Poole, Stace, and Josephine Johnson in the wonderful night of music at the House of Strut at 17 West 41st Street here in Savannah, Georgia. Hear all of this great music for only a $10 donation. Don't miss this evening of music and merriment on Friday, October 20th, 2017, from 8 until 11 p.m. So in this show, I want to talk a little bit about real estate investing and why you should do it. And this is mostly geared towards the small-time real estate investor like myself. As you know, if you listen to my previous shows or listen to any of my YouTube videos, I've gotten into real estate investing kind of as an accident. It wasn't planned, and I didn't want to have anything to do with real estate after my first tenant trashed my house, and several more after that until I finally figured out how to avoid that. But I didn't want to get into that at all. That wasn't my career goal. I actually went to school to be a software engineer, and I actually have a master's degree in software engineering, so completely off topic with real estate, has nothing to do with real estate. It did become quite useful, though, to know a little bit about computers once I got into real estate investing some more. But with this radio show, with this particular show, I wanted to make this show the first one, but got a little bit sidetracked there. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about real estate investing itself and why you should maybe consider to get into real estate investing yourself a little bit, even if you have another career or you have maybe other plans for your life and went to school for something completely different, or even if you have another business or doing something completely off topic of real estate. So why should you get into real estate investing? Now, one of the things that I did a long time ago, and this is probably when I was sitting in my little cubicle writing software code for the U.S. government at Robins Air Force Base, actually, here in Georgia. That was my very first jobs were in software engineering at Robins Air Force Base. And I would sit in my cubicle for 10 hours a day. And if you love that kind of work, all the power to you. But I hated it. I absolutely hated it. It was not what I wanted to do with my life. And I realized that very quickly after I got my first job. So I started thinking about, okay, what else do I need to do? Because I need to get out of here eventually. I'm going to be stuck here for a while. This is what I went to school for, and changing tracks here in my late 30s or mid 30s was difficult. So I needed to do something else. And I needed to find some sort of sideline business that didn't take me away from home as much, and where I could raise a family and not be too bogged down with work all the time. I did enjoy working with the people that I worked with. They're awesome people, but I needed to figure out something else. And one thing I realized is that a lot of the people that were wealthy, or even the people that had businesses or just independent from working for somebody corporate, they had real estate. Now, they may still be working in their businesses and may still have corporate jobs, but they all had real estate. So the wealthy individuals that I knew about that were in my life, even at the time, had real estate. And I was already involved in real estate. I already had rentals. So I had to figure out some way to make that pay out to the point where I could quit my job. And this is one thing that I realized about real estate. And we're going to talk a little bit about the multi-dimensional asset class real estate. This is like a long word. I'm going to break it down for you, but let me just repeat it. Multi-dimensional asset class. What does that mean? So what that basically means is that unlike stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or commodities such as precious metals like gold and silver, you can make money with real estate on 5 fronts. And actually, these are my 5 main fronts. You can actually make money in lots of other ways as well that I'm not mentioning here. But the 5 fronts that I want to talk about today are cash flow, appreciation, amortization, tax savings as in depreciation expenses, and diversification, which gives you immunity to inflation. So let's talk about those 5 things that you can basically make money on with real estate that are not available to you if you invest in anything else. So at this point, I just want to apologize. This probably is going to sound to you a little bit like a math class or an economics class, and you're probably already tuned out, but I'm telling you, please stay on, keep listening, because I'm going to try to break it down for you very easily. And somebody told me one time that I had this gift of explaining things for the simple-minded person. I don't want to say any bad words or anything, but the simple-minded person can understand what I'm saying, even though the concepts are a little bit difficult. So let's talk about these 5 dimensions of real estate, of making money with real estate. Let's start with cash flow. That's the easiest one. So yes, you can make lots of money with real estate in terms of cash flow. And how do you do that? That's basically by getting rent from the property that you own and you rent it to somebody else. That's pretty obvious and pretty self-explanatory. If you purchase a property, let's say you have a mortgage, I don't know, for $100,000 or so, and after paying the mortgage payment, which usually includes taxes and insurance, the mortgage company actually collects those and puts them in an escrow account for you, and then they pay for your taxes and insurance. And after that, you have maybe a little bit of a delta between what your tenant pays you and what your payment is, and that's going to be your cash flow. That's what the money that you're making on that real estate. Now, with time, this is going to be great because your mortgage will be paid off and your tenants are still paying, hopefully, and you get cash flow that way. And that's basically, you can use that as an income. Now, if you plan way ahead, of course, and a lot of my real estate investing colleagues actually are very keen on buying properties and holding them and using them basically as assets to plan for their retirement. That's a really good thing, but again, holding on to real estate for 30 or 40 years or so, nobody can really look that far ahead. So I kind of keep my plans a little bit closer to home. I make maybe a 5 or 10 year plan on the kinds of properties I want to keep. And that also gives me an opportunity to look a little bit about fluctuations in the market and whether my properties are even going to return the rent that I want them to return. But generally speaking, rents do increase over time, especially in good areas like here in Savannah. I'm not really all that 100% knowledgeable about what I can say about areas here in Savannah. Savannah obviously has some very, very awesome areas for renting and for buying properties, and also some very poor ones. And I actually own real estate in both kinds, so I know exactly what it means when your property values go up and down. But in general, Savannah is growing. From all the reports that I've read, the economic reports and the business journals and everything that I read, people are moving to Savannah, and we're having a great time doing the vacation rental hosting. So Savannah is a pretty safe place to invest. And again, this is my opinion. Take it or leave it. But back to cash flow, very obviously that's a very easy one to understand. So let's talk about appreciation. That's the second front of money making if you own real estate. Appreciation, of course, means that your real estate is going to be worth more in the future than it is today. And hopefully, if you purchase the right piece of real estate, it will increase in value at a steady rate over the years. And again, that's not universally true. And I have invested in different areas here in Georgia, and I own some property actually in Macon. I may have mentioned that at my previous show. Macon isn't doing very good right now, and my real estate in Macon has definitely depreciated in value since I bought it. So my plan for that real estate is just to keep it and to use it myself, or use it as a vacation rental or short-term rental. And I'm going to get later on into a little bit explaining why I do vacation rentals versus long-term rentals. But in general, Savannah is a pretty stable market from what I've experienced, and it's slowly growing. Areas like Warner Robins and Macon are kind of been static. They're not really going up or down. And everything, of course, depends on the work situation there in Middle Georgia. One of the biggest employers there is Robins Air Force Base. So there, you kind of need to know what the military is doing, if they're going to close the base there, or if they're going to make sure that it stays open and your real estate doesn't devaluate over time. But here in Savannah, we have a lot of things going on. We have industry, we have the tourism industry. Obviously, we have other industry like Gulfstream here. And we have the hospitals, we have the Army bases. So it's a very great tourist destination, actually. So Savannah is sort of as long as we don't get a huge hurricane coming through, which we've been spared, thank goodness, it's kind of like a stable market. So I would definitely, it's a good place to get into in terms of investing in real estate. So you can fairly surely assume that appreciation in this area of your real estate is going to go up instead of going down. And that's kind of what you want in the real estate that you invest in. So you want cash flow, and you want your real estate to go up in value over time. And with this, I just wanted to say there's actually somebody here in the studio with me. They're going to make a little video of me while I'm recording this show, and I'm going to share that on my Facebook site. And he is absolutely not knowledgeable at all about real estate, and he's sitting here in the background being very quiet. He's not allowed to say anything, but he's giving me like the thumbs up or thumbs down if I explain this properly and correctly for people to understand. And of course, if you're listening to this show right now, even if you're driving here during your lunch hour, and by the way, it's hump day, woohoo! We have Wednesday, middle of the week, so we are halfway there, right? But if you're listening to this during your lunchtime hour, don't forget when you get back to a computer or maybe tonight, feel free to send me a message, realestate@juliamspencer.com. I always say the M in the middle stands for money. That's the easy way to remember it. You can also just say mom, which is what I am. So let's get to the next dimension of the multi-dimensional asset class real estate, and that would be amortization. What does amortization mean? You probably heard this before, and it's probably something that your real estate agent, probably not even your real estate agent, but probably your loan officer, your mortgage loan officer maybe explained to you when you closed on a house. But if you never bought a house before, you're brand new to real estate, what does amortization mean? What does that even mean? Well, what that means is that over time, the loan that you take up on a property, if you do get a loan, if you get a mortgage, actually you decrease the loan by paying it off over time. And of course, at first, it's going to be a very slow process because a lot of the money that you spent on making your monthly payment basically goes into the pocket of the bank, which is the interest that they collect. And also you're going to be paying for taxes and insurance, which is what the mortgage company will also collect from you. And in fact, by the way, I wanted to say this, in the state of Georgia, we have the requirement is that every mortgage company or every bank opens an escrow account on your behalf, and that's what you see on your statement. It says escrow account. That just basically means that they will collect additional money from you monthly beyond what you're required to pay for your mortgage, and they're going to set that money aside to pay your taxes on a yearly or bi-yearly basis. Like here in Savannah, they collect it. If you're located here in the city of Savannah, believe it or not, there's actually 2 taxing authorities. So if your property is located within the city limits, you'll be paying taxes not just to the county, but also to the city. And they actually also collect twice a year. So you'll get 4 tax bills altogether. I know this is kind of hard to get for some people, but a lot of times the escrow account will pay for that. So you actually don't even need to worry about it too much. And this is what we get to when we start talking about tax sale foreclosures some more, and why I can get some awesome deals for on properties where people don't pay their taxes, because tax liens on real estate are actually the most senior liens on a property. When they're actually senior to mortgages. So if you purchase a tax lien as a purchaser at an auction, for example, you're no longer responsible for anyone's mortgage, obviously, and the mortgage company basically loses out. But we're going to be talking about that on another show. That's not the topic here. The topic here is amortization, and that just basically means that over time you are paying off this loan that you got against a piece of real estate. And if you're using that real estate as an investment versus you personally living in it, then the cool thing is you're collecting rent payments and somebody else pays to pay off your loan. And that's exactly what we want as a real estate investor. And I'm going to add one little example here of something that has happened to me one time, actually, at one of those real estate auctions, at those tax sale foreclosure auctions. I had purchased a property. It's actually, I don't even know the name of the street, but it's on the other side of the big bridge that goes to South Carolina, the one where we're trying to change the name off right now. But I purchased a property that's close to that little statue of the dog. Please correct me. I absolutely don't even know what the name of that business is, but it's close to that area, and I forgot the name of the street. But I purchased the property at a tax sale foreclosure. And of course, what happens is I have to provide my name, my address, and the original owner has a year to redeem that property. In that year, I don't have any rights to go to the property, and they have, of course, the right to contact me and talk to me about redeeming the property so they can get it back. And the owner did actually contact me, and they said, hey, what's this? Why was my property sold? I paid the taxes. Well, what they did is they paid the city taxes, but they forgot to pay the county taxes. So if your property is located in the city of Savannah, within the city limits, you will be responsible for city taxes and county taxes unless you're outside the city limits. And the person didn't know this. Their family actually owned the property outright, and they didn't know that there was 2 taxing authorities. Apparently, it was a matter of an inheritance. The parents were in a nursing home. They weren't helping the kids with the real estate anymore, and the kids were trying to figure out, or they were adult kids already, obviously, but they were trying to figure out this mess of, okay, I paid taxes, how come my property was sold anyways? Well, that's why they didn't pay the county taxes, but they paid the city taxes only. So, of course, I explained that situation to them. I'm always very helpful with people that want to redeem and stay in contact with them and enable them to get their property back as soon as possible, of course. So again, if you have a mortgage though, you don't need to worry about that. Your escrow account will pay for that. Mortgage companies actually hire people specifically to manage escrow accounts, and that's all they do. They collect money from the person that has the mortgage holder, and disperse that money to the various taxing authorities as needed. They do the same with insurance, of course, because they want to make sure that their property is insured while they have a mortgage loan on it, so it doesn't burn down and then they get nothing in case that happens. And again, thank you for tuning in to Real Estate Real Talk with Julia M. Spencer. I am here to give you all kinds of really cool information about real estate, anything and everything to do with real estate, specifically as it is here in Savannah, as I live here in Savannah, Georgia, and the information is actually mostly concerned with this city and with this county where I do a lot of my business and a lot of my work. You are listening to WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. Our discussion today focuses on the multi-dimensional asset class real estate and what all those multi-dimensions are that you can make money with if you're a real estate investor. And some of the things that we've already talked about are cash flow, amortization, and also appreciation of your real estate. And the next thing I want to talk about is depreciation. So we talked about appreciation, now we're talking about depreciation. But it is, although it sounds similar, it is completely different topic. One has nothing to do with the other in a sort of way. Well, they all are related, but depreciation has more to do with tax savings. And actually depreciation is one of the top things that investors are looking to get when they invest in real estate. And I can give you all kinds of information about depreciation. I actually made a YouTube video about that, just basically explaining that topic and how you calculate that if you're filing taxes. But let me just break it to you in a very, very simple way. If you're a real estate investor, now mind you, this does not apply if you own a home and you live there yourself. This is only for investment real estate that you use as a rental. You can deduct depreciation expenses, and depreciation expenses on real estate are actually quite significant. So what that basically means is when you purchase a piece of real estate, and let's say that it cost you, my go-to example, $100,000. That's a very cheap piece of real estate, actually. Not sure you can get a whole lot more anymore for $100,000, but let's say you purchase a piece of real estate, it costs you $100,000. That's for the whole entire improved real estate, and that means the land and the building. Then you can actually depreciate the building over 27 and a half years by the IRS code. And what you basically do is you divide what you paid for the improvement of the real estate, not the land. Now, the land does not, you cannot depreciate land. Land does not depreciate in value. Of course, there's many stories that I can tell where people have tried to do that, but by the IRS code, you cannot depreciate land. Even if your building burns down, your land is still there, so you can't depreciate it. So you would basically subtract the value of the land from the value of the building, and then you take that delta and divide it by 27.5 years, and that's your depreciation expense for every one of those 27.5 years. So, and my person here that's listening to me basically just raised his hand and said, okay, I don't get it. So let me just break this down. This is one very, very simple calculation. With my example, if you have a house that's worth $100,000, the land is worth $30,000. The difference between those two is $70,000. You take that $70,000 and you divide it by 27.5 years. That gives you a depreciation expense of $2,545 and a couple of cents. So you can actually deduct that almost a little bit over $2,500 on your tax return. And what that means is not that you'll get $2,500 back from the IRS man. What that does mean, however, is if you have already taxable income, let's say from a job, or you've made some significant cash flow on that property, you subtract that expense from the cash flow that you got, and then you only are responsible to pay taxes on the difference. So basically, depreciation expenses decrease your taxable income, and this is what we want as real estate investors. This is what we're striving for. A lot of times, and I've actually heard this so many times from all kinds of real estate investors, it's not about how much money you make, it's actually how much money you get to keep. And in order to keep the most money possible, you have to increase your expenses as much as possible so that you aren't stuck with paying more taxes than you have to. And the cool thing about that actually is that, hey, you have this huge depreciation expense, but you don't actually have to pay it because A, your tenants actually paid for it because they pay your rent and that's what you pay your mortgage with. And it's not a cash outflow expense. You don't have to actually go and pay somebody $2,500 to get this expense on your tax return. This is already part of what your tenants pay. This is what your mortgage pays for. And this is what our IRS code says that you can get. So I'm always kind of chuckling when people say, well, you did a lot of tax evasion here. You have all this real estate, and how come you're not paying more taxes now? Well, you have depreciation expenses. As an investor, you have those expenses. And if you have lots of properties, let's say you have 10 properties, and each one is like the example that I explained, and you can deduct $2,500 on each one of those and multiply that by 10, you get a $25,000 deduction on your taxes. I think that's pretty significant. And in fact, if you have a normal, maybe a salary job or so, that probably comes already pretty close to what your taxes are that you pay every year. So this is where depreciation expense is this great, awesome thing that I just love talking about. And if you have any questions about depreciation at all, feel free to send me a message, realestate@juliamspencer.com, and I'll be glad to answer. All right, so we are well into the hour, and you're listening to Real Estate Real Talk with Julia M. Spencer. I'm sorry, I'm making a lot of mistakes here in my pronunciation, but we've talked about cash flow, appreciation, amortization, and tax savings, as in depreciation expenses that you can claim on your tax return if you own investment real estate. But let's talk about this last one, which is diversification. And what do I mean by that? And diversification partially also means immunity to inflation loss. And if you are an investor of any kind and you have stocks, bonds, maybe mutual funds, and you've invested in any kind of monetary things like bonds or maybe metals like gold and silver or stocks or whatever else you do, you should really consider investing in real estate as well, because real estate historically has been proven as one of the most stable asset classes. And basically, people are going to need to live somewhere. And the population of humanity is increasing. And if you go about it smartly, you really can't lose. I mean, with real estate, you're in such a stable area, especially here in Savannah. I think it's a very stable area. You can invest in real estate, and your investment is pretty safe to inflation loss. And you basically diversified your portfolio of money. Now, if you're just starting off and you're a small real estate investor, smart as well, not just smart, but if you're a small real estate investor, this may not affect you because you may not have any of the other investment funds, but you may be more concerned with cash flow. You may be more concerned with getting the depreciation expense because maybe you have a full-time job and you're paying a lot of taxes and you want to pay less. Maybe you're more concerned with amortization. Maybe you want to buy one of these older houses here in Savannah, Georgia that haven't been remodeled yet, in the hopes that in the future the value will go up. And I can tell you right now from experience, what I've seen just in the last 5 years here, that kind of plan is just taken off for a lot of people. It's just phenomenal how much more some of these buildings are worth now versus what they were worth about 5 years ago. My property here in Savannah, Georgia is actually located on 37th Street. It's a very nice street, but it's kind of borderline of historic district. It's not in the historic district, but it's in the city of Savannah. And I have seen the increase and the appreciation of that property many times of how much I bought it. and I'm very grateful for that. So that is definitely something, plan that you can get into if you're planning on booking on the appreciation side of real estate. So these are basically the five most important, anyways, asset diversification classes or methods that you can get to if you're investing in real estate: cash flow, appreciation, amortization, depreciation, and diversification, which is immunity to inflation, or a leveled immunity to inflation loss, anyways. And whenever anybody asks me about investing in real estate, that's basically what I tell them, is like, okay, you can make money with this, you can start a business here, but just make sure you get some real estate on the side in some way, shape, or form that you can then later on use. You can, even if you pay off some of your real estate, you can have that sitting as kind of like your little cash cow that you can go back to if you need to. Real estate has been very useful in a lot of areas in my life. And if you're planning to get a little side business going, having a little vacation rental or just a rental is a great way to get that started. So the one other thing that I wanted to mention, because I did mention earlier that I want to talk in the next couple weeks possibly about tax sale foreclosure investing, one of the topics that a lot of people have asked me about, and there's so many different rules and regulations of how the different states here in the United States do it. I'm very familiar with how it's done here in Georgia. I'm familiar with other states, and I'm pretty much can explain to you how every state does it. But something that I actually noticed is that you have to be really careful when you get into tax sale foreclosures. It's not for the beginner. So you got to educate yourself. You got to ask other investors that are doing it for advice. And case in point, actually, I'm going to go back to this example at my last tax sale that I went to. I'm standing in line, and there's a couple of people talking in front of me. And of course, my ears get sharpened when I listen to people talk about real estate, because I just love listening and talking about real estate as well. And an older gentleman actually shared some information with a younger lady that they both had bought some property, and the information was incorrect. So I kind of interjected and kind of corrected him, and he didn't know, and obviously the young lady didn't know, and so you just got to be really careful where you get your information from. You got to make sure that you have reputable sources. You ask the officials that conduct these sales. And let me tell you real quick what that has to do with anything that I've talked about today. But when you invest in tax sale foreclosures, obviously you're paying very little for the property, and you usually don't have a mortgage on it. So out of those 5 dimensions, money-making dimensions of real estate, those 5 fronts of dimensions of making money with real estate, out of those 5, you can subtract 2 of them if you invest in tax sale foreclosure investing, and they are basically your depreciation expenses. You won't have any depreciation expenses because you're actually not paying much for the property. So if you're paying, a couple $1,000s for a property and you divide that by 27.5 years, you're not really going to get very much per year. A couple of dollars, it's not worth it. So that particular side of it kind of falls off. And amortization also falls off. And I didn't mention this earlier, but one of the reasons that it's good for you to pay off your loan is because you can actually, as an investor, claim the interest expense that you pay on a mortgage loan as an expense on your tax return. You cannot do this if you actually own your real estate that you live in. Sorry, correction. Actually, you can. You can deduct the interest expense on your home loan as well as if you're a real estate investor. However, if you're purchasing a property at a tax sale foreclosure, again, you don't have a loan, and you probably can't get a loan for a while because the property is not something that somebody would give you a loan for usually. And again, a whole nother topic. We're going to discuss this at another show. But you don't have that expense. So 2 of those 5 dimensions that I mentioned, and of course there are more, they fall off if you purchase tax sale foreclosures. So So here is, and the point I want to make with all of this is that if you want to get into real estate investing, I'm all for it. I'm definitely going to encourage you. If you send me messages, questions, or input feedback, I will gladly answer it, and I'll gladly give you information on that, or even set you straight if you have something wrong. But the point is, you need to educate yourself. And one of the great ways to educate yourself is, of course, listening to WRUULP, to Real Estate Real Talk with myself, Julia M. Spencer, on a regular basis. Send me messages, and you can go to my Facebook site if you like and get more information, to my website as well. And my email address is realestate@juliamspencer.com. Feel free to send me any questions that you have. I'll be glad to answer them. And we can talk about all these different strategies that we can go through in order to make money, and what kinds of real estate you should get into depending on your particular situation. Now, I really, really look forward to get some messages. I haven't gotten any yet, so I wonder if anybody's out there actually listening. So if you are listening, send me a message, or even just say hi if you like. I am here for you. My job is to educate you and to help you and to keep you informed and knowledgeable about the whole entire world of real estate. And I hope you can tune in again next week. My show is starts at about 12:06 p.m. on Wednesdays, hump day, easy to remember, at your lunch hour. You can listen to it on your way to lunch and back. Also, if you don't have a chance to listen to it, you can also go to wruu.org, to the archives, and pull up any of my old shows and listen to them. I appreciate input on current shows or old shows. And you are listening to WRUULP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, wruu.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll be back again next week. I hope to have you as a listener again next week. Have a great rest of your day and week.
For your free guide to real estate investing, visit juliamspencer.com.